So we've all heard this one, right? We should run the government like a business. Republicans have been touting that lie for decades. They have been convincing their voters that they need a strong businessman in the White House. And now they've conned them into voting in a 6-time bankrupt CEO. And in a MAGA verse that we live in now, guess what? We are all the employees. But we don't get time off. We don't get pensions, retirement fund, good working conditions. We don't get upward mobility. No, we get long working hours and a treacherous working environment. Thanks, MAGA. Welcome to Political Critical Thinking. I'm Stephanie Beninati. And if you are feeling outmaneuvered in these political conversations, whether you're being ambushed by your in-laws, whether it's blindsided at a bar, or you're just scrolling MAGA madness online, you're in the right place. Our mission is simple: to arm you with the truth, to help you cut through the noise and understand the actual real agenda and dismantle every single talking point. Now, here's the bad news. They've had 50 plus years to perfect their spin, overwhelming us with coordinated lies. Now, the good news is it's predictable. They wrote everything down. We're going to teach you how to predict what they're going to say before they say it. And if you understand these 3 things, the Powell memo, Reagan's deregulation, and basic high-level Democratic policies that are for the people and Republican for corporation legislation, we believe that you can dismantle every lie, every scam, every time. And you can do it calmly and confidently. Today, we're dismantling the government should be run like a business myth. And full disclosure, I am a business owner. I started a business 14 years ago out of the basement of my home. We now operate in 20 states with 2 office locations. This is a 100% woman-owned business. No partners, pulled myself up by my bootstraps. So when people say to me that government should be run like a business, I'm always like, interesting. However, most businesses fail because most people don't know how to run a successful business. And before we break all this down, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So let's break this down. A business exists to make its owners, stockholders, and investors money. That's it. Employees exist to produce product. They're not there to thrive, vote, and definitely not to share power. So ask them, how do you benefit when the government cuts or annihilates things like FEMA or the Consumer Protection Agency or agencies that oversee our health and food safety? Or what about monitor terrorism or even things like Ebola? What happens when we add another $4.7 trillion to the deficit on top of the $7 trillion Trump added in his first term? What does that look like for you and your children? Because when a government adopts this business model, services get cut, regulations disappear, oversight vanishes, anything that costs too much money like clean water, safe workplaces, our basic rights, all of that becomes expendable. Now, at this point, they might seem a little confused and they could pivot to, but the Dems this and but the Dems that. Don't get sidetracked. Stay focused, because this is what will happen throughout the conversation. As they get uncomfortable, they will continuously pivot. And the goal is to stay focused on the topic and bring it back to this point. It has never been about fiscal responsibility. This is about stripping away public protections and turning them into private profit centers. That's how you get private prisons, for-profit healthcare, and the privatization of the public school system. So basically, there are people making money off of incarcerating us, keeping us sick, and quite frankly, dumbing down America so we don't know how to fight back. And Republicans, they do not debate policy, ever, because they cannot win on policy. That is why they flood the zone with outrage. Trans rights, gay rights, the border, crime, QAnon, COVID conspiracy, drag shows, pedophilia accusations, whatever it takes to hijack the Americans' emotion and shut down any logic. It's about making people hate the very people, the Democrats, who are actually fighting for their rights, for them to have a better life, for them to have more money in their pocket, for them to be protected from corporate greed, and to have actual opportunities for upward mobility in the society. Now, here's what I like to call the reveal. We unmask the dark truth that is hiding in plain sight. Because we know that running a government like a business is a scam, but it's also an elegant disguise for authoritarianism. In business, there's no voting. There's no we the people. There's the CEO and everyone else follows. Profit is king. Stockholders, their value is supreme, and its main priority is to grow, is to buy out competitors and consolidate power, ultimately to be as big as it can get. Think Amazon. Now, that's perfectly acceptable for a corporation. But when government operates with that same mindset, prioritizing the profits and interest of a select few, growing and infringing on state rights, imposing requirements and regulations on independent institutions like universities and the media, it's no longer a democracy. It's a dictatorship in a suit. Coming close. Here's what I want you to think about when we talk about authoritarianism. Many Trump supporters and MAGA people do not want a democracy. They're just too afraid to say that out loud. So just ask, do you feel like we should still live in a democracy? I mean, it's good to know this, right, up front. Now, it really doesn't matter what they say. What I would do is just follow it up with, a lot of people say that they want kind of an authoritarian / dictator style government because those people actually believe that the person at the top is fighting for them and pushing their agenda. But here's what corporate authoritarianism actually looks like. The people at the bottom are the cogs in the machine, and their job is to enrich the select few at the very top. And that is why, by nature, authoritarian governments are corrupt. And they get to that position by convincing everybody that they are pushing their agenda. But the reality is, it's always about money. And you've heard me say this before. You'll always know what you need to know by watching where the money flows. Now, here's where we bring the receipts. The Powell memo. This wasn't an accident. In 1971, Lewis Powell Jr., a corporate tobacco attorney, penned a memo for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Just 2 months later, Nixon appointed him to the Supreme Court, where he oversaw legislation that pushed this agenda for the rest of his tenure. In that infamous memo, Powell declared that the free enterprise was under attack and that corporations had been way too lackadaisical and they needed to take back control. He outlined a plan to infiltrate the universities because universities were churning out critical thinkers who were questioning the system. He targeted the judiciary because the courts were following the Constitution and they needed to control the media. Before Reagan deregulated it, news was independent, often locally owned, and it was not kind to corporations. Now, most news is owned by 6 conglomerates. Now, when Reagan, our deregulator-in-chief, came along, he picked up that playbook. He deregulated everything. He worked to crush unions, and he shrank government all right, but government as it protected the people. And he expanded corporate welfare. And by killing the fairness doctrine, they started the media takeover. Over the last 50 years, they have created a media empire. Fox News draws more viewership than CNN and MSNBC combined. And with this mega microphone, they have been able to convince working class Americans to vote against their own self-interest and to do it in the name of freedom. But here's the thing. It's not freedom if you go bankrupt because of medical bills. It's not freedom to live under crushing credit card debt. It's not freedom to unleash predatory lending onto the American people. It's not freedom if you cannot get a college degree without having to pay for it for the rest of your natural-born life. And it is not freedom if you cannot buy a decent home or have great health care or pursue your dreams. And it is not freedom if you cannot live your best life in an America that is supposed to be the land of opportunity. Now, here is where you might see a MAGA white flag. And what that looks like is, oh, well, I'm actually just a one-issue voter. But Usually what you'll see is they'll say something like, well, they're both bad, or I'm really more of an independent. This is the MAGA white flag. When they say that, they're done. They're trying to get out of it. They're trying to concede. And my suggestion to you is do not let them. This is where you dig in. Now, we're good at identifying what MAGA has done wrong, but we often fail to clearly identify what Democrats have done right. It's important to point out the strategic demonization of Democrats by the right and explain, because Democratic policies cost corporations money. Full stop. Workers' rights, civil rights, fair pay, affordable health care, environmental protections. These are all threats to profit. So instead of competing on policy, Republicans built a media machine to specifically foster hatred of Democrats. When people believe they are fighting a holy war, they aren't thinking about policies. They're coming from a deeper, more visceral place. And that place is good versus evil. And if you say it loud enough and you say it long enough, they don't need proof. They just need clicks. So let's be clear. This is corporate funded, foreign boosted, culture war distraction built to protect one thing: power and profit. And it's important to articulate this clearly, not just to Trump supporters, but really to third-party voters, to people who sit on the sidelines and let democracy pass them by. We need to make sure that they understand that this is about corporations. And it can happen to any party who gives greed a seat at the table. And it isn't about changing MAGA's mind. Because, look we are never going to do that. There's nothing I'm going to say that you're going to say that's ever going to change their minds. But it is about making them uncomfortable. Because the more of us who can understand how we got here and are willing and able to articulate this and have these conversations on the regular, the more uncomfortable they will be. Because when people are uncomfortable, then they are movable. Only when they're uncomfortable can they possibly be uncalcified. So that's why we're here, to expose one Republican topic at a time. So join us for the next episode when we dive into government as a business, the AI edition. Until then, please hit like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell. And then share this with one of your MAGA family and friends who still thinks Reagan's a great guy, bless their heart. But seriously, we're not just fighting lies. We're undoing 50 years of a propaganda machine, one conversation at a time. Thanks for watching. Bye.